welcome to Tub Talks with Damon. My very special guest today is activist Robert Suttle, a true hero and true activist in the truest sense in the HIV community in so many ways. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out to Brooklyn today.
It's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, I'm so glad. When I started this series almost 2 years ago, you were definitely on the list of people I wrote down saying, I really want to hear your experience and talk with you about your experience. Because your life and your work has shaped my life and thousands, millions of others. And we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
But before we get there, I want to ask you, which I ask all my guests, what do you like most about your body?
Oh my gosh, what do I like most about my body?
Yeah.
I like the fact that I've remained slender all these years, despite either I gained a few pounds or lost some pounds, that I've managed to stay slim. So I like the fact that I've been slim for a long time, and now that even in my adulthood, that still remains the case.
Yeah.
I grew up a skinny kid, so it's all I've ever known. But I have put on some pounds recently, and so I'm learning to live with it and accept it. But it still keeps me looking slender. So.
Mm-hmm. Is that, do you use that through your life or exercise or work or running around New York?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Just eating, staying busy physically. I recently just started back working out because I realized as I've gotten older, now in my 40s, that I need to just keep my strength up and be flexible and that kind of thing. And so, just staying busy. A lot of people think I worked out for years. I'm like, no, you just move around, getting groceries, especially here in New York City, all that walking and up the hills and downstairs, carrying bags. You get in shape naturally.
Right. There's a constant flow of exercise going on in New York City as we run up and down the subway stairs, which you did a lot of today to get here. So We're very thankful to Robert for that, to get here to Brooklyn. So let's then jump right into this experience that you have shared around the world pertaining to your body. And more specifically, how your body became criminalized about 15 years ago. So we're doing this interview in 2023. Mm-hmm. You have been generously open about your experience of having to face criminal charges and do jail time because of your HIV status. Mm-hmm. And so can we talk about that?
Sure, let's get into it.
Okay. And I do say it's generous because you do a lot of this talking, and it's not an easy subject. And I think it's kind of you to put yourself and your emotions out there for people to learn from and hopefully act on in terms of changing these laws. But let's go back a little bit. About 20 years ago, 2003, you were living in Louisiana, and you learned of your HIV status at that time.
That's correct.
Okay, so what was that experience like?
I was enlisting to the Air Force or the military. It's how I found out. I got a notice that I should come back to the processing station for something medical related, and I couldn't imagine what it could have been because I've always been pretty healthy most of my life and never been hospitalized at that time. And so to get that message and not for them to tell me exactly or explicitly what it was alarming to me. And I remember it was a holiday weekend, like a Columbus Day weekend in October 2003. And I had to wait over that weekend. So it just felt like a long wait. And truly, when I went there, I was taken into this room and I was told that I was HIV positive. And so I just remember in that moment feeling very numb and not really feeling anything else except just shock and this sort of numbness that I felt. And that stayed with me for, I don't know, a couple of days, maybe a week or so. It just felt like I was zoned out when I got that news.
And you were very surprised. This was not in your immediate consciousness.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I didn't realize or thought that I mean, obviously I was sexually active at that point, but I didn't think that I had perhaps put myself in any type of danger or risk as far as sexual health is concerned. But hey, as I've now learned that as being a Black gay man living in the South, of course HIV is definitely very prevalent. And I just didn't know just how close it was to my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did they treat you upon delivering? This is the Air Force?
Yeah, I don't know which branch. I just know it's like a commander of this particular processing unit, military processing unit, and there was a doctor, and so they were very gentle. I can recall. I didn't feel like they were being. I don't recall them being any type of way except just giving me the information and just letting me know that I could not continue to serve. But that I could go on and live a healthy life. So it's like those things I do remember, and that's it.
So medically, the message was you can live a healthy life.
Mm-hmm.
And did they give you any resources for mental health or emotional support to cope with the shock of this?
No, or if they did, I don't remember. But what I do recall is the fact of knowing where I needed to go next, which was the viral disease clinic or infectious disease clinic. In my city, in my hometown, and so of course I'd never been there. I didn't even know where it was, and so that was sort of the next step, is trying to figure out where that place is and how to navigate that.
Did they just give you a piece of paper and say, here, go here, or did they do any kind of active linkage, or what we call linkage today?
I don't recall that. They may have given me the name of the clinic. But I just remember that was sort of the next step. I don't think they gave me a piece of paper or anything. It was just more like, this is where you could go.
Okay. Yeah. And did you get treatment right away? Did you start talking to a doctor right away?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Maybe it was the next day that I had gone, or it could have been the day of. At that moment, remember, I'm zoned out. It's just like everything is all runs together. But yeah, I immediately went into care.
Wow. Were there people you could talk to, or friends or family you could turn to at the time?
When I learned about my status, I didn't tell my family right away. I didn't know what to tell them. Again, just zoned out. All I could think about was my own life, and as far as like, is it ending? Will I die? Which is probably a lot of the way many people who are newly diagnosed think, because you don't know what to think, but you automatically start thinking the worst of what could happen. I remember telling a few friends, maybe two friends, the guy that I was dating at the time and another good friend of mine, about my diagnosis. But I pretty much went to that clinic on my own. I was very afraid, because like many people, you're worried about who's there and who may know you, and just sort of things blowing out of proportion just by the fact that you're in a place that you don't know much about, but other people may. But then also just navigating that space was quite intimidating in the beginning.
Navigating the medical spaces?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because I didn't really know what to ask or what my need was, as far as just needing to get treatment for this diagnosis.
Right. And as you said, like, if you're living in a certain place and there's one medical clinic or a few medical clinics, you walk in, technically there's privacy laws, but in the real world, you don't know who's going to be there, and you don't know what their story is, and you don't know how they're going to respect your privacy outside of there.
Absolutely. And this place where it is located, it was very remote. It's kind of, I recall it being like in an industrial type area, right off this freeway that runs across our town. So it's not a place where many people are just driving by, sort of making it look very normal, and it's very isolated, very remote.
Do you think that stops some people from getting from treatment for getting medical care?
In one way, yes. But transportation-wise, you could take a bus there. I actually did that once, but it's quite a process catching the right bus, and then you have to walk a little distance. So transportation could definitely be a barrier.
Wow.
To this particular area. But yeah, this definitely could be a reason why people, especially those newly diagnosed, would have some challenges showing up.
Right.
To get connected, to get linked, and to, as I would say, change their lives, for the better by making that first step.
Right. What part of Louisiana was this in?
I'm from Shreveport, which is the northwest
Okay.
part of the region of the state.
Okay. So you're walking into this place for treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You were about 24 at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
What was that like, and how were you treated?
But I will say the people there were very nice. I had some very nice nurses. Even the front desk clerk was really nice. And even the case manager, I'll never forget her. And I still remember these people today. Now that it's 20 years since my diagnosis, those people really helped me take those first steps, and I am forever in debt to them, honestly, because they were not only just good people who took care of you health-wise, but they were just good, genuine people themselves. And so that part really really came through, and I think it really made the difference in their work and how they treat people. And I'm still connected to them today through Facebook. And so, but thinking back now, like those people really made the difference for me.
That's beautiful to hear. That's the one thing I know has been consistent in these interviews and in my therapy practice, is that when you are coping with something really new, a new HIV diagnosis, trying to take the breaths and the steps to go from point A to point B, the people who are there for you along the way can really make or break that experience. And unfortunately, sometimes people are really not sensitive to that.
Yeah.
But when I hear stories about people who have good experiences with the medical profession, you okay?
Yeah.
That's always heartwarming, because you're going to remember them the rest of your life.
Yeah,
the people who were there, the people who were kind, the people who answered your phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
They're with you.
Yeah. And I hope to some way visit them, if not this year or sometime soon, to just show my appreciation for what they, how they really helped me at that time, because it definitely made the difference, considering like the location and just the fact of getting this new diagnosis. Those are things that really could make people just really not, do what they need to do. And so I'm glad that they were able to help me keep coming back.
Yeah. So in 2003, the protocol for HIV treatment, it was still a little bit in transition. I know we kind of went through a time when there was kind of a wait and see approach that doctors were using. Instead of starting people on antiretrovirals right away, at least for a little while, some doctors were saying, let's see where you're at, let's see what your viral load stays or how your T cells function, as opposed to today, where I think it's much more like get you on meds as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. What was the protocol or recommendations given to you back then?
That's a good question, and thank you for bringing that up, because I've not really thought about that part yet, as I'm exploring more of like the history of kind of like what was going on when I was diagnosed, because I had no idea. And so thank you for that little tidbit there. I just remember just getting on meds immediately. I don't recall a wait and see kind of thing. Not saying that wasn't the case, but I just remember them getting me on meds, and so much that the meds that I was on I don't want to use the word terrible, but they were just drugs that were just I just did not look forward to taking them, even though I had to, and I did. So much that I can recall like this pattern that would happen. Like if I take this pill, I think it was Sustiva. And for those of you that may have taken that,
I'm just having a visceral.
Yeah, like 30 minutes in taking that medication, if not sooner, you automatically start having these vivid dreams. And so I just remember that, and it was just so weird, and I hated that, but for me, it's like, well, this is what you had to go through. And I remember one time I missed taking my meds at night. I think I was taking them at night at that time. And I remember taking it in the middle of the day. Because I was so like paranoid, like, oh my God, I missed. And, you know, to take something like that in the middle of the day was not the best. It was not the best. And so you know, as many of us have gone through, like we learn how and when is the best time to take our meds. And I remember I don't know how long I had gone before I had decided that, oh, I need something different. I need something that's going to work with me and not something that shuts me down.
Yeah.
Because there were some periods I was taking meds in the mornings and then I switched to nights because, again, depending on how my day was going, I needed something that was going to work with me and not against me.
Yeah. So about how many, do you remember, how many pills a day were you expected to take?
Oh yeah, at that time I was taking 3 pills,
3 pills.
The cocktails, the Sativa, Rayataz, and if there's another one that escapes me, but yeah, I was taking the cocktail.
Wow. And do you remember, like, how soon afterwards did you start to see labs that reflected either undetectable or at least an increase in CD4s? Because I think we looked more at CD4s back then than vital loads.
Yeah.
When did they start to see the meds were working for you?
That's a good question because I think I didn't necessarily pay that much attention. I mean, I know I received this information and maybe had documents to showcase that. But I do remember each time I went, and again, the nurses, the people that I work, they would always tell me, you're doing good, you're doing well. And so I remember always having this good feeling that I was on track and that, you know, things are good and everything's working the way it should, despite the effects of the meds that is working. And yeah, so I think it began to make me feel better about my condition and just my whole circumstance.
Wow. So at the same time, your career had been completely derailed in the process. I mean, that's how you found out you were living with HIV, was because you were pursuing a career in...
Yeah, let me back. I was actually about to graduate from college, from undergrad, when I learned about it. And so, again, that was just a surprise. And so I was just so happy in listening to the military, just as an alternative or an option for a career, you know, because I wanted a career in HR. So I was trying to just get into any type of structured organization where I could sort of take advantage of those type of opportunities if they were available. And so once I learned that I could not serve, it was like, well, I need to go out into the world and find a job. And what I did was the Disney college program. I don't know if Disney still do that today, but it's in Orlando, and it's where college students, I'm just gonna say college students, that you could go and be a part of this program, almost like an internship in a way, but they provide your housing, they provide you, I think, a stipend for your work, you know, you're working and everything. And so I remember doing that. And so that is what made me, allowed me to leave Louisiana to go to Florida. So although I received my diagnosis in Louisiana and I was there for a bit of care there, I eventually moved to Florida, and that's where I really dealt with the brunt of my diagnosis. Because I think when I learned about it, it was like, oh, in shock, but I had to graduate from college. And so I had tests and things like that. So everything just kind of moved really fast. And I think once I was settled in Orlando, after going through the college program process, that everything just kind of hit me. And now I'm 1,000 miles or so from home. The guy that I was dating, he actually moved there too. He actually got accepted into the program. So I felt that, you know, I had him as support, but there's always those challenges when one partner is diagnosed and the other is not. And no matter how you try to look at it, there are always going to be some sort of conflict or challenges there as far as support and communication. And so that relationship ended, and there I was just by myself, literally. And so I was connected to another team of good people that I felt that understood what I was going through. And they, just like the folks in Louisiana, were very helpful too. Because I started feeling depressed when I was in Orlando. And of course, now being by myself, you think the things about who would want you, how would life go on? and so all that kind of stuff settles in. And but I got through it. The counselor that I had, she was very helpful. And
how was she helpful?
Oh my gosh, she was a Black woman. I'll never forget that. And you know, for me, I was raised by Black women, and so it was just more like having a mom, an aunt, or a grandmother even. But I remember her telling me that I would get through it, and she was right, and I did. And I think one day I just woke up and decided I wasn't going to be depressed anymore, and I was going to go out and make friends, and I slowly started to do that, and eventually it did happen.
Oh, okay, so you were coming back, you were working with the depression, figuring out your professional career, taking care of your HIV and your medical health. And then, may I ask you about New Year's Eve of 2007?
Oh, yeah. So that's 2003, 2004. Well, we fast forward.
We fast forward a little bit.
Fast forward to the end of 2007, going into 2008. And of course, by that time, I've navigated all kinds of situations around where, as far as disclosure is concerned, from being on the apps and connecting with people in person.
So how did you manage disclosure during those years?
Oh my gosh. It was challenging because you really didn't know how to do it. Nobody really told you how to do it. But, you know, if you just on an app and you're connecting with people, you just kind of put it out there. And then you watch whether people continue to talk to you or if they'll just shut down.
So back then the apps were like AOL? Or I'm sure like Craigslist or...
Yeah, AOL, Craigslist, what is it, Manhunt, Adam for Adam,
okay.
A Black Gay Chat.
And did they have a place for you to list your status, or was it something you had to proactively disclose in a conversation?
I don't remember if they did or not, but I do know that I just disclosed it in conversation. So I went through a lot of that, and also just telling people in person. I remember this one incident where the guy just literally broke out in a sweat, literally. And I was trying my best to console him, and it just didn't work.
So wait, you're the person who's living with HIV and taking care of your life, and you're put in a position of consoling somebody else when they're freaking out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I said, I can't say that I've gone through it all, but I'm saying I've gone through quite a few situations to let me know kind of like, wow, how people really respond to HIV or to a person living with HIV. So it was enough to make me just kind of shut down when it came to really engaging on it, because you kind of, after a while, you kind of learn this pattern of how people respond. However,
again, the pattern back then was not that kind of sweat panic thing that people were having when you would disclose.
Well, not everyone did that. That was just the one particular situation that.
In general, what was the response you would get when you would disclose?
Well, people would say, "Well, okay," or you may not do like any type of penetration, or you may just kiss, or just lay naked, or things like that. And that's kind of the extent of it. And so you just kind of learn, like, well, this is how this is how it is for me. And so, that's a little bit of what I remember in those earlier times. But by 2007, I had felt like I was, so 5 years in, I'm thinking I'm pretty good with disclosing, because I started disclosing to so much that I learned that other people were positive that I didn't know or would have thought of. And so that kind of felt good to meet other people in person that were also, I guess, felt confident to tell me that they were HIV positive. And so that made the difference. However, in my particular situation that led to the prosecution, there was a mutual friend that knew about my status because he was one of the guys that I had told. And he was the one that sort of initiated this sort of, confrontation, if you will, after meeting the guy that I had met through New Year's, that I didn't know that well, but that's somebody that I liked and that we actually hooked up casually for like 3 months. He said that he was concerned about his friend You know, I was like, well, okay. And so I remember being on three-way, and the friend asked me if I was HIV positive, and I disclosed even then on the phone immediately, and because it wasn't like I had anything to hide. I mean, he knew, and of course I felt that I had told the guy that I was with, and I say that because, you know, when you've gone through these things and the way people sort of characterize it, it makes you second guess yourself. It makes you second guess the whole experience. But I recall that we did have conversations about it because we didn't have condoms, and so the negotiation was that, you know, we weren't going to do anything. But of course, when desires and passions get into play, things happen, and the guy didn't seem to have any issues with my status, and this is over 3 months. And so I you know, I don't know, and our relationship was kind of quiet. Even that mutual friend didn't know about our relationship. And so it's my guess that perhaps by sort of exposing this relationship, that really, I think that really made that guy really feel some kind of way, even though he was already angry with the relationship ending. We didn't always see eye to eye, just differences, not that he was a bad person or anything. It was just we just saw life differently, and we felt differently about being Black and gay. And, you know, some people really do have some hang-ups about certain aspects of them, particularly if it's around their sexuality and how that sort of connects to who they are professionally, and how that looks to their family or friends and what have you. And that was sort of new to me. I tend to accept myself as I am and other people, but I find that other people do have some hang-ups. And so I say that to say that I noticed that we were different in that regards of how we saw ourselves as Black gay men. And there are some people who feel like they are, the word that I'm going to use is elite, meaning they are not like the others, and that they are very responsible, and they are careful about what they do, and that you may think that about yourself to be the case, but then sometimes reality that certain behaviors aren't as responsible. So we tend to sort of put people in other categories that we don't. And I think because of the fact that I was HIV positive, it kind of seemed that I was sort of this, the other person that no Black gay man wants to be, you know, or professional Black gay man wants to be. So.
And that's how he saw you?
I believe so, yes. Yeah. Because the things that when he decided to press charges against me, he said I should turn myself in, and I should be ashamed of myself, and even discredit my job, you know, because I had a degree, but I didn't, you know, have, like, I guess, I don't know what I needed to have, but I remember him really downgrading my job and saying that, what did he say? It's something to the effect of, that I didn't need a degree for my job or something like that, but just really belittling me at that time. So I knew right away that was somebody I should not have been involved with. And so that is my best advice that I give to people living with HIV, that do be mindful of who you are engaging with, no matter how you may want to be involved with them or connect to this person. You got to think about if they don't know about your HIV status, what is their relationship to HIV? Because we may think that they are okay people, but when it comes to that HIV element, you know, they become someone else that we may not feel very comfortable with.
And it sounds like he was belittling you and looking down on you throughout the course of this relationship. If that's
I would say so, because it was a contentious relationship where we always bumped heads on just the simplest thing. It could be what's going on in the news, or what the day is, you know, or, you know, I see blue and he see green. You know, it's just like, it's just, the arguments were never about anything serious, I would say.
So you got to know him throughout 2008, you were dating and kind of realized this is not going anywhere, this relationship is not...
Well, the beginning of 2008.
Yeah. So the relationship then came to an end after you said a few months. You broke it up or he broke it up?
Ooh, that's a good question. I maybe think that I did, or maybe it was kind of a mutual thing because we realized like, okay, yeah, this is not working for either of us. But I do recall like me really wanting it to end because I just wanted to be done with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I do know that part, and I just remember him being angry about it, and then of
He was
course-
angry about the relationship ending.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Or maybe just angry at me, and so. But he was angry. I'll just put it that way.
so then another friend got involved.
Yeah, I think when the friend learned that we had this sort of casual relationship, he like got us on the phone. I don't know what other conversations had been had prior to that moment, but it is what happened.
So he gets both of you on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
He has you again disclose your HIV status because you had already done it.
Yeah, because I even told him. So it wasn't like I had this sort of pattern of just not disclosing.
Right, you were very open
Yeah.
with people in your life. This was not a secret.
No.
So you were put on this phone call, asked or told to again disclose your HIV status. And then what happened?
I just remember, again, the guy was very angry, and I can remember all that he may have said in that moment, but I just remember us hanging up, and I recall just getting text messages after that, again, that I should be ashamed of myself, that I should turn myself in, so on and so forth. I remember, like, one day I was at work, and again, trying to reason with him, just trying to, like, calm him down. And I remember him threatening to press charges, and I remember saying, please do not do this, because I'm thinking about all the things I have to do, sort of responsibility as far as my home life is concerned, like taking care of my grandmother, my grandmother at that time, because my grandfather, I think, had passed, at some point, he had passed, so my grandmother. So I'm just thinking about all these things, right? I'm working, and I just remember it's like, please do not do this type of thing where you're threatening to press charges against me, and hear me out. And he just would not. And I remember him saying something about that if he was in fact positive, he was going to go get tested, he was positive, that he would press charges. And so, when you're in that type of situation and people are not trying to hear what you got to say, you just have to let it go. And I let it go, and I just waited for the other shoe to drop. Meaning when the police would come and want to arrest me. Because again, he's overreacting, and I'm just trying to deal with whatever this is, as it relates to my status. This idea of me bringing harm to someone else, that's not in my nature. And so by default of being HIV positive, it kind of puts me in a position that I normally don't see myself in, and it kind of portrays me in a way that that signifies that I'm kind of a dangerous person, and that is such the opposite of me.
Right. Was he texting you regularly? It sounds like these texts were like accusatory and fucking abusive and violent.
Yeah, over time, I don't know how long it's been, but it was a period. It wasn't very long, but it was just a period of time.
Saying outrageous things about you, about your character and who you are, your integrity.
Yeah.
And you were sounds like you were really trying to diffuse this so it didn't escalate into a police matter.
Right, because I didn't really know how to deal with this as far as taking it to the police. Now, you do something like that, I really don't know how to deal with that, but one-on-one, I can talk to you, and I can explain as much as I possibly can as far as like where I stand, as far as my diagnosis and things that I'm trying to do or what I think about. But when you want to take it to the next level, there's not much that I could do. And so that's why I just let it go and just I think accepted whatever it was going to be. So if he was going to go to the police or if he was going to press charges, then do it if that's what he felt he needed to do.
How did you get through? Like, how did you sleep at night? Did you sleep at night?
It was hard. It was hard. It was times as many people say, you want to wake up and realize that this was a dream or that it wasn't happening. And so it was hard because I really didn't have anybody to talk to about it. I didn't know how to explain this to my family or to anybody. And so there was a lot that I was having to hold. And I don't think he realized that, or he probably even cared.
So then how did the police get involved?
Ooh, I remember getting a call and it went straight to voicemail, and I remember listening to it. And again, I didn't know what to do with that. They was like, call us, we're calling, this is the detective, we're calling, and please give us a call back. That was kind of it. And I was like, well, I just ignored it. I didn't know what to do with that. It's not like I had somebody to, okay, you got this mission, this is what you do. And then you don't really think that it's happening. It's like, is this really happening? So I ignored it, and there was one point where they did show up at my job, and this is over a period of months. So this was like March, and then they showed up at my job by May, asked me did I know him, and I couldn't, and I said yes, but I couldn't talk to them very much because there was something going on at work, and I just remember getting their card, and that was it. And then the next time they showed up, and I don't think I got any text messages from him at this time. I think they may have stopped like in March or in April or something like that. But by May and by August, I never heard anything else from him. But the detectives did show up at my job by August of 2008, and then that's where they arrested me at work. So the investigation was over a period of months from like, I would say March to the time he filed the police report to August. So just think about the months, how they're probably doing their investigation. And then of course there was a moment where they did show up at my home when I was not there. I was at work, and there was a document on the counter, which was a copy of the warrant that they had, the search warrant that they had. And it lists all the things that they had searched in my apartment.
They had been inside your apartment.
Yeah,
they had broken inside and searched your apartment.
Or led inside. Yeah, so I think they were looking for anything that was evidence to show that I was HIV positive.
Robert, what was that like? I mean, this is fucking like emotional terrorism.
Well, I will say that when I walked into my apartment, I kind of had this feeling like somebody had been there. It wasn't like the door was damaged or anything. It's just kind of this feeling. It was a feeling that I had. And sure enough, when I just saw the document, I was like, wait, obviously somebody's been here, and I saw what it was. Yeah, I remember just feeling my stomach just sunk. Just this feeling like I was just about to lose it. Lose my core, because again, somebody had been inside and they actually went through all my things, and they touched my things, and then it was of course tied to this situation that was sort of unfolding, right? So it was a very sickening moment.
Okay, I need to adjust just a little bit. Sorry, but okay, it's about to. All right. So then the next steps were to get some legal help.
Well, I couldn't get legal help until I was arrested, and so. That's the first thing you should know about that. If anyone's facing prosecution, that many people think like, well, what can I do? Well, you can't do anything until you're arrested, because there's really nothing to be done unless you can talk to the individual, which you can, again, take a chance with that. I would think in some cases it can work to talk to the individual if possible, but then like for me, it didn't really work. So
did he test positive?
I don't know. I still don't know.
So to this day,
But the fact that he said that if he tested positive, he was going to press charges. So I would take that. Maybe he did, because he obviously pressed charges. But I have no way of validating that, confirming that. I like to think he wouldn't lie about it, but I mean, I tend to take people at their word. If what you tell me is what you tell me. So. if I transmit HIV to him, I definitely would feel bad about that, and I am just bad just thinking about that. That could be a possibility or a case. But again, I have no way of confirming that. And then now, as I've learned more, who's to say that they may have contracted HIV from me? They could have possibly contracted HIV from other people.
Right.
But it just so happened that I was around and in his life and identified as a person living with HIV, and it's kind of like, was it wrong place, wrong time, or whatever? But yeah, these are things that now come up, and I wish that we could have had some discussions around that. Mm-hmm. But again, people are not thinking.
And as we know now, perhaps not as clearly in 2008, you had already been on meds for several years. Mm-hmm. You had been consistently stable on medications, which we now understand was undetectable and untransmittable.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that when you're not given that information about, I have to think about, I was on meds. I actually was, because again, those things are not taken into consideration when you're facing these type of things. And so as people living with HIV, we need to be knowledgeable about these things so that we can have a peace of mind, even as we go through these experiences. You know that you've been in care, you know that you've been taking your meds, regardless of where this person may feel like you exposed them or something. You know that in fact that you could not actually transmit HIV to or potentially harm this person because again, the treatment works.
Right.
And so although the law is saying by not disclosing, you're exposing someone, but on the other side of that, you've not harmed anybody.
Right, and you had disclosed, and you were undetectable.
And so that goes to show you that really disclosure does not matter in these cases. Yeah. So I just want, if you didn't figure that out yet, disclosure does not matter in these cases. So stop asking people if they disclosed or not.
Right.
Because it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Because again, they don't take into consideration whether you actually did it, if you're in care, if you're on treatment, when you have an undetectable viral load, if you used the condom, or any other sort of circumstances that those things are not considered in court.
Right. So then you were arrested. The police
Yes.
did come. They did arrest you.
They arrested me at work in front of my colleagues, my coworkers.
What was that like?
That had to be one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. It reminded me of when I learned about my HIV status. I was shocked and numb and zoned out. I remember them asking me, I had just come off my lunch break and I was asked to come to the front of the office because I was in the back of the clerk's office. And I stepped, and I thought maybe I was just going to talk to them. And I remember stepping beyond the counter, and that's when the officer said, "Please put your hands behind your back." And I was like, "What's going on?" And I remember her asking me, she's like, "Do you really want me to say? Meaning, do I really want her to say what I'm being arrested for?" And I didn't know what the charge was, to be honest. I just said no. I didn't know what the charge was, but I didn't want whatever it was to be said in front of my coworkers because they didn't know I was living with HIV. And so by them saying that would just really put out a lot of stuff, that was my business. I remember saying no, and then they just arrested me and carried me out of the building and into the police car and took me to the city jail and booked me.
That just sounds terrifying.
It was terrifying because in that moment you have no control over your life, literally.
And then the next steps legally were what?
The next steps legally were, eventually I did get an attorney, someone that I knew from just working at the court. By then she had her own practice, and just a lot of court hearings and court dates for about a year.
So for about a year of your life, you were dealing with these court dates, with these legal things. Did you get to go back to your job?
No, I was immediately put on administrative leave with pay, and then subsequently without pay. And they did that up until for 6 months or so. But we know these cases don't adjudicate within 6 months. It's a lot longer than that. So I literally lost my job. And I remember having to turn things in, and it was hard because having to go in front of my coworkers and me not really understanding fully what was going on, I didn't really know what to say to them, and I know they didn't know what to say to me, and it was in those moments I felt very, very alone. It was like a lone man walking, even there and even going to court. I didn't invite my family to go through that experience with me, only because I felt like it was my mess, and so I needed to really deal with that. And I was responsible enough to understand how to try to navigate through it. And plus I had a lawyer, so I feel like between the two of us, we could figure it out, but I didn't know as much as I do now as relates to these experiences. And so I know that I did the best that I could with whatever information that I had. But then not a lot of information was asked of me about my diagnosis or anything. That's one thing to keep in mind that comes up now for me, is that nobody really asked me about me. It's just these assumptions, that I had done something wrong, that I committed a crime, and therefore I was supposed to show up and go through this legal process. And not even my own attorney asked me about my diagnosis, as far as what is that like, or what are the issues, what are the things that I should take into consideration. None of that stuff was asked of me.
Were there any friends or people at the time that offered you support, emotional, physical support?
Yeah, there were people that knew me, knew my character, that knew, that there was a situation going on in my life, and they were, at times encouraging. And there's some other things where when I was in the city, not city jail, but just the parishes in Louisiana, parish jail, I ran into someone that was a member of my church that happened to work at the jail. So it's situations like that even then, I remember this person being encouraging, but it was just the oddest thing. Someone like myself in jail, that's not how I was raised. That was not supposed to have been my trajectory. I was a good person, a law-abiding citizen, so it's how do you end up? So it was just kind of odd seeing certain people that I know worked in law enforcement or whatever, and them seeing me in that light. They're used to seeing me at church or in the choir or just doing good things, and here I was in jail. And so that's not just for them, but that's for my family. That's for anybody that knew me. It was just a really odd kind of situation. But I eventually learned, well, why not me? And now that I understand sort of the odds that are against me, being a black man, being a black gay man, HIV positive man, now formerly incarcerated man, and registered sex offender, these things are subject to happen to you just because of your existence. And I didn't fully understand that growing up. And so I literally walked into circumstances that were literally by design. And I just happened to be one of those black young men that just got caught up in that web.
Yeah. In that structure, in that system. Because we're not, I don't think, just talking about criminalization laws, which are ridiculous, but we're talking about a system that targets specifically black men.
Yeah, HIV, the inequalities, the disparities, I've lived among these things and didn't realize it as a young black man. And now I've had to live my adult life bumping into all of these different things because of the systems that we talk about, the inequality, the disparities, and and it's like a web. You get caught up in it and you get entangled in it, and you're left to suffer, to deal with, try to navigate it through it. yeah, this is all by design. That's what I've learned.
What does that feel like?
It is not a good feeling. That means every day that I wake up, I'm having to face some type of obstacle or situation. It seems like no matter how much good I do, there's always going to be some situation or some circumstances going to set me back, which is why I do my advocacy so strongly, because this is not how it's supposed to be for me, and it's not how it's supposed to be for people that look like me, men or women. This is not how it's supposed to look for us as Black people. So we have to, all our lives we've had to fight, and so every day it's a fight, it's a battle, because again, having these labels, the collateral consequences from a conviction, these things are this is like lifelong consequence. It's not something you can just, I went through that for 3 years and I'm done, I move on. For me, it carries on, and it still continues to carry on.
So ultimately, you copped a plea, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you pleaded guilty, or you pleaded down.
Well, pleaded guilty. There was
Pleaded
no
guilty.
pleading down.
Okay.
Down. This is a felony, and so they weren't interested in pleading down anything for a Black man in a conservative area. No.
What, in your mind, was the benefit or reasoning for pleading guilty?
Well, one, I wanted it to be over because I didn't know. I had never gone through anything like this, so I had nothing to show me that, do it like this or whatever, and you'll be okay. And plus, this is my first time offense. Whatever that does, whatever that gives you. I say that to say, meaning that I wasn't someone that had a history. Mm-hmm. So, I thought that maybe that my character would show that. That I'm someone that was in school, I was working, like I wasn't somebody that was intentionally out committing crimes with my HIV status. But what I've learned that this is most common for people to take pleas in these type of situations. Mm-hmm. And it just makes the job for the prosecutor a lot easier. And sort of the weight of the fact that it's HIV related. I mean, who's going to argue that, no, this shouldn't be the case? People think that, well, if he's HIV positive, he's being accused and not disclosed, he must have done it, or he must be a threat or a danger. There was no sort of assessment to say whether or not I was a real danger. That's the problem. Under the American Disabilities Act, it requires, sort of this assessment to be done for people based on their disability, but that's federal law. But when it comes to these state criminal laws, there is no assessment to sort of assess just how real of a threat you are. Because again, they're not taking consideration whether you're condom, you're in care, undetectable, on treatment, so on and so forth.
They're not considering science.
Yeah, they're not considering science in this situation, which is what's unfortunate. So you see how easy people can get caught up in this,
yes.
Just by the fact of them being positive. There's nothing else being assessed or said other than, okay, he's being accused of this crime. He is positive, so okay, it's just, book them, processing them through. So
then you served jail time
mm-hmm.
for 6 months.
Yeah, initially I was given a probated sentence for 2 years. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I'm not in jail or in prison. And so what I didn't anticipate is that when I went to register for probation is where I learned I had to register as a sex offender. So that, again, as I say, it's always one thing that sort of leads to another thing. And I had to do that because I couldn't, if I didn't, I would have violated myself, and that would have just been what a probation officer would have wanted, just to have me locked up. So I had to do that, and then I went to my attorney's office and immediately addressed that issue because it was never brought up in court for like a whole year. And so she filed a motion about it, and it took a couple more months. By this time, I had already done a year of probation before we got another response of like, you do have to register, but it requires prison time. And so that's when we learned that obviously they sentenced me incorrectly. because with that particular charge or conviction, it required a mandatory prison time. So yes, so I was on probation, I was in compliance. Because of this technicality with the sex offender registry, it required that I had to register, which also prompted that, oh, he needs to do jail time, hard labor.
So you thought that the worst had been over, that you had faced the worst, that you had found probation, that you had found a way to get through this, or it began to move through this. And then they slap prison time on you.
Or the registry and then prison time, yes. But I knew if I did the 6 months, which is what they gave me eventually, because I was already a year and some months into the 2-year probation. So I'm grateful for the 6 months, because it definitely could have been a lot longer. So that time was short. But I knew if I did that, then it would be over, meaning no more court hearings. Like that when you go to prison, that takes care of it. That kind of closes the case. But of course, I still had to register as a sex offender. So they don't consider that criminal. They consider it more of a civil regulation, which there's nothing civil about doing that.
Right. And that's a federal registration. That's so that's in Louisiana. In New York, do you have to be? Are you a registered sex offender in New York State?
Yes, I am currently registered on the registry here in New York State because of the sort of order that Louisiana had as far as 15-year registration. Now, New York doesn't have HIV-specific laws, although they have prosecuted people living with HIV under different laws. It's not a common practice. Louisiana is an HIV-specific law, and so I've had to learn a little bit about New York law as far as the registry is concerned. I'm still learning, but yeah, it's kind of like they don't want to set a bad precedent. So if you're coming from another state that requires you to register, then New York, again, not to set a bad precedent, requires that you should register. Now, I'm supposed to be on the registry for 15 years. This is like year 14.
I was gonna say, we're close to that, right?
You know, nobody's sending me any type of notice to say, you know what, oh, you've been on since 2009, so you come off on this date or whatever. But instead I'm getting notices that I should come and take my photo. New York State is sending me notice that I should come take my photo between now and a certain date, just for an update.
So again, just to make sure people are understanding here, you were prosecuted for a crazy law that doesn't exist medically. You were not at risk. You had disclosed. You did not put anybody at risk. You had to serve prison time, go through extensive legal fees and emotional trauma. Today, you still have to be registered in New York State as a sex offender. So, and is that like on your license?
No, it's not on driver's license in New York, thank God. And luckily, it's not on the driver's license in Louisiana anymore. There was another case that happened that sort of changed the outcome of that, which is good. If you learn about that case, you probably wouldn't feel good about it. But the fact that this guy had to register, he felt that it was compelling him to speak, and as a result of being on the registry, and that makes sense. You know, it is a form of like you're compelling someone, and so luckily this case was heard in the courts, and the courts saw that it was unconstitutional, and so that's a win.
Now, does that mean in New York you're still limited as far as where you can live? Are there limitations?
That is always the case. It is a case by case type of situation. I haven't had to deal with any of that, thankfully, in this city. Not saying that I can't or wouldn't deal with it. I've just been pretty lucky at this point. Part of it, I had a job where it was sort of protected me in a way, because my work is my job, you know, and it's also my work is my life because I'm living it. Still, and so I didn't have to have any issues with employers or concerned. And so as far as my housing, that's just been a miracle that it hasn't been an issue for me, but it can be, or it could be, but it's not. So, but if I'm trying to move beyond sort of where I am, then there are those challenges that potentially could come up because I don't know how these businesses or employers feel about hiring people, and especially if they don't know my situation, they just see me as someone who has a felony, who's on the registry, and to them that may be, well, that's it. I don't, he's not a eligible candidate or what have you. Or I don't want to get hired somewhere and then they learn about it through the media because I'm very public and very open about it, so it's not like I'm hiding anything. But again, people may feel a certain way about certain things, and again, that may hinder me. And so those are challenges I still have to sort of explore with the hopes of a good outcome and not a bad one. Because I'm at a point I'm kind of tired. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of just challenge after challenge after challenge. But again, this is something I've been doing for a long time. So it's like, what's one more thing? But it is tiring. It gets tiring.
After going through this process, has it been difficult for you to trust a sexual partner or someone you are seeing intimately?
That's a good question. I really don't think about it as much. It's almost like I went through a process with this. I don't, because I think because I'm so public and so open that I talk about it in a way that it's just all this transparency, I like to say, at least on my end, that, and honestly, that's on purpose because it's about knowing your power. And as people living with HIV, we have power, so that's why I say, don't feel so bad about your status. There's power in that. People want to take away that power. But you take that power back by being as open as you want to be, not as anybody else, but as you want to be. That works for you. And a lot of that comes through knowledge. It comes through the knowledge of really understanding who you are as a person and who you are as a person living with HIV, and understanding that the science is on our side. And when you stand in that knowledge, there's nothing that anybody can say or anything or any force can do to really throw you off, and so I don't think about it as much, but it has been concerns for me over the years. Right now, I guess I don't think about it as much because my life is just so isolated. It's not as normal as I would like it to be when it comes to dating, because I think some people feel some kind of way about what I do and probably feel like that it may expose them in a way that they are not wanting to deal with. At least that's no one's come out and told me because they probably don't know how. But I find people that appreciate what I do, but I had one relationship that was where it lasted 2 years, but even that was challenging because you really didn't know how to introduce. How do you introduce someone that does work in HIV to a family? People.
This is what Robert does. He helps people around the world take back their power.
Certain folks that are so removed from this, it just brings up even more questions, and it's not questions about the good that you're doing. It's about, you personally. And so I think it's kind of looked upon as kind of like,
You've experienced that?
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I see what it is, but I just kind of step back from it because I already see where it's going. But I think some guys just have, I think people just kind of have some, troubles with, and of course it's not like you're making millions of dollars, and it's not like being a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, but I believe in what I'm doing and I know what I'm doing. It's just that other people find other types of professions to be more sort of worthy
I mean, it's almost like, so what are you supposed to do? You've been through this experience, you've learned ways to take back your power, you're helping people around the globe, which I know you're doing. And then you're saying like some people that would be not a positive in terms of dating you or introducing you to family, that would work against you. It's like, well, what were you supposed to do? Cower in the corner and be like, pretend like it?
I try not to put myself in those situations.
Yeah.
So it's, I still trust people. I do, I always have until I'm shown otherwise, but I also understand that I test people's knowledge, and usually by how they respond to certain things lets me know where they stand. It lets me know just how far I should go with them.
Yeah. Okay. How you feeling right now?
That's good.
Thank you. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this talk and to have you here, was just because I think a lot of people don't really understand the implications of HIV criminalization laws and what they the damage they do, and what they've always done, which is primarily single out people living with HIV, almost always Black Americans, and absolutely destroy lives. I mean, some people haven't gotten through this, or have killed themselves in the process of going through what you have been through.
Yeah,
or can't ever trust intimately or sexually again out of fear that something's going to be used against them again in a traumatic, violent way.
Well, it just goes to show what's going on in our country today with abortion and other things. They want to make people they want to make women criminals who choose to have or may need to have an abortion for all sorts of reasons. So, it just becomes another way. As I said, HIV, again, another way. The war on drugs, another way. And so, even as gay people, they were criminalized you for being gay. So this could be any of those things, not just HIV. I know we're talking in the context of HIV, but HIV criminalization, but it could be any of those things that are part of your livelihood.
But the weird thing that I was struck during COVID, like, okay, this is a disaster of the worst public health degree. Like anything that could go wrong went wrong especially during 2020.
Yeah.
And yet, what didn't happen was this search to criminalize people who had transmitted COVID to other people who died.
Yeah.
There didn't seem to be this desperate search to penalize and traumatize and criminalize people for spreading COVID the way they did with HIV.
So I wonder why. I wonder why.
Tell me your thoughts on this.
Because, what about my civil liberties, my rights, or what have you, or around this? And so I remember feeling very outraged when I would hear people talking about their rights to just really not wear a mask and potentially expose someone to COVID, which people can die quickly from or contract COVID quickly than they can in HIV. So it's like something's off here.
Right. No, there's still the average today where we're filming is like 363 deaths from COVID every day in this country. We don't talk about that as much, but that's still happening. I'm not seeing 363 people being held in court for transmitting a deadly virus. When you were, when your life was so changed by this search for crime and punishment for something you didn't even do.
Just existing as a Black person, Black gay man, a Black person living with HIV. I think had we known that people would be running the other way to not become HIV positive, because who you're literally considered a criminal. They're just waiting on someone to identify you as this person who is exposing someone HIV.
And are you worried about this happening again?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It is in the back of my mind, because it's not something I don't want to go through this again. I don't, and I would be stupid to think that I wouldn't, because anything is possible, especially when you have certain officials or certain people in position of power who would support continuing to criminalize you. So I would be naive to think that, I already went through this, it won't happen to me again. It definitely can. And so it is something that is in the back of my mind, but I like to think that, again, my power of transparency and openness will just sort of overshadow anyone's attempt to really want to do that. Because again, I'm not trying to harm anybody. I wouldn't want people to be diagnosed. I support PrEP. I support all the alternatives that people have to protect themselves, whether they're living with HIV or not. Like, take advantage of those things, and so that you don't have to deal with certain things. Yeah, so.
Earlier, you referred to a thought, and I'm wondering if this was part of getting through, was why me or why not me? Can you say more about that while you were going through this experience?
I mean, I always was for the underdog, always someone that spoke out against injustice. Even as a little kid, I always would, but I thought maybe I would become a lawyer and be able to represent people, and that kind of thing, because I, again, always looked out for my grandmother. And, when people get a certain age, their understanding about certain documents and things, processes, and so I was always that one that came and helped, like, create some understanding around a lot of that stuff. So that's what I saw myself doing. Never would I have thought that I would be addressing, social issues or any type of like policies or laws in a way that affected my own life. And so, I say why not me, because I know that whatever I'm going to do it with the best representation possible, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want the narrative for many years as a Black man, as I've learned, is we are criminals. We're criminals just because we're Black and we exist. So that, as I've learned that, and so anything else that comes with that, whether it be HIV, being gay, or formerly incarcerated, or sex offender, like, those are just extra labels to further the narrative that's been out there for years. So our job, or at least I feel like my job, is to counter that narrative, show that we are intelligent people and that we are not people who are criminals. We're not born criminals. It's a shame that there are people in our society that believe or are bought into these stereotypes or these false narratives about Black men or about our culture and community. And so it's my job, it is my duty to do the best to represent my people and to speak truth to power. And I think that's why I speak up and speak out, and I'm very open about it, because we are not trying to hide anything. And that, again, so I carry all these labels, so it's my job to really, it's my duty to do the best that I can with that. And that's what I'll do till I can. And so why not me? A lot, it used to be this scripture that I haven't said it, too much is given, much is required. And too much is given, to whom much is given, much is required. That is a scripture in the Bible, and I hadn't quoted that in so long, but that's what comes up for me. That so much has been poured into me. I think it is what has prepared me for times like these. My grandparents knew exactly what they were doing when they were teaching me the things that they taught me. They may not knew a lot about all the things about being gay or to be positive, but they gave me enough to have good character, to be able to, have some education, so that I can fully understand how to sort of dissect and navigate these things that I was going to be faced with. And so that's why I said, why not me? Again, much has been given to me, so much is required.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Damon.
Thank you.
Appreciate talking to you and your audience.
So if people want to learn more and find out what they can do to help change the criminalization laws that still exist in 35 states, where can they go? What can they do to learn more about you and learn more about what's being done to change?
Wow. Well, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not someone that really bolsters myself out into the world. I just do what I do just naturally. But I really do. I just do it naturally. But I've been fortunate to be able to do it with a lot of national organizations that are also, that represent community, that represent your community as people living with HIV. And those organizations are the Positive Women's Network, the Suttle Project, the Counter Narrative Project, Transgender Law Center, as well as the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus. There's the Center for HIV Law and Policy organizations, and there may be some statewide coalitions in your state, depending on what state you're in. And if you're curious, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to try to connect you with those coalitions that are doing work on the ground there in those states that still have those HIV-specific laws. And then there's the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, who has been very active in this work. And so we're all kind of working as partners in this sort of national advocacy around decriminalization. And there may be some other organizations that I'm missing, but there's also the HIV Justice Network for those in your audience that may be in other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. So I encourage you to check that out. And if you are interested in getting involved, the HIV Justice Academy is like a tool, it's like a very good resource where you can learn about HIV. You can learn the things that I know and the other things that other activists that are involved. And it's like it's a tool where you can take your time and learn about all the different aspects of this advocacy. And so that's the HIV Justice Network and the HIV Justice Academy. For those, or anybody can actually access it, but for those in other parts of the world, you can definitely access it that way. And so those are just a few organizations that are ever present, that represents community, that are longtime collaborators in this work.
Beautiful, beautiful. So those links, and you said people could email you?
Yes, you can definitely.
What's the email?
R for Robert Suttle, so that's rsuttle2000@gmail.com.
Beautiful. Last question, I promise. If you could go back 20 years and give yourself a piece of advice 20 years ago, what would you say?
Oh my God, I would say learn as much as you need to learn. All the things that I've learned, I didn't know that I needed to know them back then, and I wish I had. But it's okay though, because I've caught on. But I would say just be more aware of the things that impact you. Learn about those things. Learn why. Learn the why. Why is this an issue for me or my community? And I feel like with that, then you'll be better prepared to deal with whatever comes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for learning. I encourage you to have these kind of conversations in your bathtubs or your kitchen tables or wherever it is you have conversations with your friends to talk about criminalization laws, justice, and how something that could be used, something so grossly unfair and unjust is still happening to people today. Mm-hmm. And I so thank you for lending a voice and increasing awareness about this so it can change.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody, if you like this interview, subscribe down below, and we'll see you on another episode of Tub Talks.